Welcome, viewers, to Islam Has a Right to Know. This presentation today is going to be on the Bible and what the Bible has to say about Islam, because Muhammad is mentioned in the Bible, and we're going to talk about that here today. And we have got supporting evidence that this was accepted information for literally centuries. And we just want to encourage you, as an Arab, as a Muslim, Muhammad's in the Bible, for sure. It's been said for years, but the devil has done a job on people today to get them to believe that Islam is not in the Bible, Muhammad's not in the Bible. But my friends, Muhammad is in the Bible because he is a prophet of God. And I'm saying that as a Seventh-day Adventist church member because I have come to realize that Muhammad just didn't happen. He was called to do this specific work. And we looked at the charts. We've looked at these charts many, many times. The charts on the left with the green arrows, when Seventh-day Adventists were understanding about the second coming, and Islam was there with the trumpets and the fifth trumpet. And these arrows point that out. At one time, my church, Seventh-day Adventist, 1/3 of their prophetic story was unlike the red arrows on the next chart. We called it the 1850 chart. 1/3 of our information was about Islam. My friends, that's a significant amount. And to have it so that Islam doesn't know the story is false. Islam just didn't happen. You people have a right to know that you were prophesied of God. You're in the Bible. You're not an anomaly that just happened. Because God loves you. He had Muhammad come about at a certain specific time, and we're going to talk about that. This chart here, we call it the banner chart. That's the way I called it years ago when we created it. And we started in Central Asia with this idea in the year 2002, 2003. In those years, this chart was created. And on the line here, we have a green line that's on the top, just below the animals, and we have a blue line that's just above the lower pictures of animals there. That blue line we found in Bible readings for the home circle. It had Muhammad's birth, it had his death, and a whole lot more about Islam. I was in shock because I was told by this time, when I first started to look at the story of Muslims, this was just after 9/11, Islam's not in the Bible. That's what I was told. But I knew that was not right because in my own study, I'd realized that there were Bible studies that had Islam in them. At the same time, today in 2021, it's still claimed Islam is not in the Bible, but we have found evidence that it is. And I want to assure you that I feel comfortable. I wrote a book for the Christian world called Islam, God's Forgotten Blessing, because Protestants and Christians forgot the work that Islam was called to do by Allah. This is important, and I wrote this about 12, 15 years ago, and this is significant. And we just want to let you know that there are Christians out there that believe in one God, and that believe that Islam is in the Bible. And this is what this presentation is today about. And we just want to encourage you. We realize that you may not have a Bible because a lot of places the Bible is hard to get or it's illegal to have. But here on the internet, at the address you see on the screen, www.e-sword.net, .org, and .com. They all lead you to the same website. They have Arab Bibles on there. I shouldn't say Bibles, plural. They have a manuscript from Arabic. Plus they have other languages that you can download the Bible and have it on your computer, and you can follow along as I go back to the Bible. I use an English version, King James Version, because it's something that is needed. Because the Bible is not something that we look at as corrupted about, because if the Bible's corrupted, then is it corrupted about the story of Islam? I disagree with that viewpoint. I've been told many times by well-meaning Muslims, the Bible's corrupted. Because Christians, some Christians, believe that there's three gods. They call it the Trinity. I, as a Seventh-day Adventist individual, I believe there's one Allah. And it's what the Quran says about Isa. He's closest to Allah. He's in heaven. He's the closest there is to Allah. My friends, we want you to be sure to know, because Isa al-Masih is returning. He is returning to this earth, and I have a book. In 2012, I was invited to a conference in Sydney, Australia, by a Sufi mosque, and they had put together a book that's probably close to a quarter-inch thick. It says, The Descent of Jesus, Believers Unite. Myself as a Seventh-day Adventist and two other Seventh-day Adventists, plus Muslims, two Sharia law judges were on this committee, as well as Dr. Laban's son was on there. Dr. Laban had just passed away a few months before this. But this book here, the conference was held in June 22nd and 23rd of 2012. Is at the called the Australian Forum, Red Gum Center, Wentworth, Sydney, Australia. This is the book that was put together for that committee and for that meeting together. And I have that because I was in attendance there, because it was amazing. I'd found things in that, and I'm going to read those things that I found there, because Christians never knew they existed. And as we start this presentation, I'm going to go over the Reformers. The Reformers are what people call, who are Christians, who did not agree with the Roman Catholic system, the Roman Catholic Church, what their doctrines were. And they wanted to reform the church, or change the church to what the Bible was saying. And that has never worked out. Then there's thousands and thousands of people were murdered and killed because they didn't agree with the changes suggested by these reformers. And I'll read this slide here. Historical School of Expositors of Islam in Revelation chapter 9 during the Reformation. Martin Luther and at least two others, they started out this concept. They were the first ones to challenge, Martin Luther was the first one to challenge the Roman Church of what was going on. Then in the 16th century, there was many people, but John Fox and John Napier were two of them that disagreed with the Roman system, that things needed to change. In the 17th century, Isaac Newton and 15 other reformers were saying, what the Roman Catholic system is showing us and doing, remember what the Roman Catholic system was bringing in. And this is why Muhammad rejected what was being said by those early Christians, because they were bringing in idol worship back into the church, bringing in unclean foods, eating pork, and praying to dead people, and forbidding the priests to marry. These were some of the things that was going on. But the idol worship was a big thing. They would say, oh, well, the idol just reminds us what's in heaven. My Arab friends, my Middle East friends, if you have ever been to Istanbul, Turkey, you'll see the mosques that are there on the hill by the Forum. Those mosques used to be Catholic churches. And you look in the ceilings and you see the paintings of what they refer to. This was Mary and this was this. They put halos around their heads. The paint is fading, but you can still see them. This is what was going on with the Catholic system, because it didn't agree with the Bible, and this is what Muhammad was concerned with. That's why he says, if you don't believe what I'm saying, go back and look at what we have said before, what we've read before in the book. And Isaac Newton, I have this because Newton is a significant reformer. He was also a scientist. And he was born in 1642, and he died in 1726. He was an English mathematician, physicist, astronomer, theologian, an author described in his own day as a natural philosopher, and who is widely recognized as one of the most influential scientists of all time, and as a key figure in scientific revolution. One of the things that was amazing to me as I started to get into Islam in the Middle East, the significant contributions the world of Islam had to science, astronomy, mathematicians, algebra, all those things. They didn't come from the Christian world. The mathematics that we have today come from the world of Islam. You had scientists that I've seen where they worked. I was just amazed, just amazed. In the 18th century, Protestant people who are non-Catholic, like John Gill, Matthew Henry, and at least 18 others, said that Islam is in the Bible. The reason I'm showing these reformers, all these men said Islam is in chapter 9 of Revelation. And that's what we're going to go over today. That's what I wrote my book about. Islam, God's forgotten blessing. My friends, this is serious. We tried to have a complete expulsion of this good news that Islam was part of God's people. My friends, they are part of God's people. They were called for a specific purpose. If you recall, when we looked at Genesis, Abraham's sons, Abraham's family, they were made up, Keturah's family in Genesis chapter 25, when Sarah had died. They were part of the children of the East. They are the Arabs. They are the people that God called to bring judgment upon Israel when Israel was sinning. These Protestants here in the 18th century, John Gill, Matthew Henry, and many others were part of that group. In the 19th century, Albert Barnes, William Miller, and 78 other people. This is amazing because it was getting larger and larger and larger in the world. The people believed the Bible's correct and Islam was in the Bible in Revelation chapter 9. All these men believed that. Now, William Miller here was the person who worked with those charts that we show at the beginning of every one of our programs with the green arrows. He and his associates believed prophetically that Islam was in the Bible and something that's going to happen in the Islamic world. I'm going to drink a water here, and we're privileged to have Zamzam water here. And it's excellent water. And I've started to drink this because I just want to show you I'm not ashamed of what Islam has come up with. And I believe that the well that water comes from at Mecca was started by Allah. 20th century we just came out of 20 years ago. Only 6 more up through 1934. All of a sudden we had an increase through the 19th century, but now in the 20th we start to see it go down because the influence of the Roman system. And the devil had gotten into the Protestant churches to convince them that Islam is not in the Bible. And so whole theologies were being created to show how bad Islam was. But I, as a Seventh-day Adventist, had information that was documented and unfolding revelation. This particular book here was written in the 20th century, in the mid part, in the 1950s. This book was written by a leader within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Roy Allen Anderson. Elder Anderson, I've said this in a previous program, but now we're looking at Revelation 9, that he says in page 90 of this book, "The star to whom the key was given well describes the prophet Muhammad, but although fanatical, they were not plunderers like the conquerors of Western Rome." My friends, this was a theologian, a Seventh-day Adventist leader, saying that the star to whom the key was given well describes the prophet Muhammad. Seventh-day Adventist leadership, Seventh-day Adventist pastors, Seventh-day Adventist workers knew Islam was in the Bible. My friends, that's what this presentation is, and that's why we had the title, Islam Has a Right to Know. What do they have a right to know? You have a right to know your history and where you came from. Because that's important, because you're not on some fairy tale. You are real people with a real work that Allah has called. And it's so a blessing for myself and the others on these programs, because we know you are in the Bible. And the 21st century, the sad thing is, in the 21st century, no one of note that's risen up in any of the Protestant churches of the world that we are aware of. Now, there's a few people, lay people, who've studied, who've come up with these principles because they've read my book, they've seen our presentations. It isn't just my presentations. It's the work of many others who are traveling this country. I've been in the Philippines, I've been in Indonesia, Malaysia, I've been in Australia, I've been in meetings in Middle East, Dubai. I've had presentations in the Black Sea, in Turkey, for the Muslims there, to realize that they're in the Bible. So I have traveled extensively myself. In all my travels, I think I've traveled to over 55 countries, preaching, sharing this word, as well as others now are doing this. But the sad thing is, leadership always goes and says, what does leadership say about it? Well, if leadership doesn't believe it, then no one wants to say anything, because then they would be offending leadership and they would not be paid. The people who are working on these series of presentations, we don't get a salary. People who hear what we have to say share their means to keep these projects going. The cameras and all this equipment that we have here in our studio. My technology man, Jason Hovey, was impressed by Allah in his prayers that he needed to come up with all this equipment. And on his own, he took his money he worked for, went out and purchased this equipment. This is the same story that other people have, that are, whether they're in England or regardless what part of the country, the world they're in. Isa al-Masih will return. And that's what this book was about the Muslims in Wentworth, Sydney, Australia. They believed that the return of Isa al-Masih was real. This is what this meeting was about that I went to. My friends, the sad thing, the 21st century, no one of note is preaching this information. That's why we are doing this, myself and others, because Islam has a right to know their story in history, in the Bible as well as in secular world history. The map that you have now, that I'm showing you, within 117 years after Muhammad died, Islam controlled everything that's in green, all the way from Western China to Portugal. That didn't just happen. God arranged that because he was trying to contain Rome, in Rome, Italy. He used the Ottoman Turks to take back Constantinople and make it a Muslim country, a Muslim city. My friends, the things that have happened in the Middle East haven't just happened because man wanted to. Allah arranged it with his calling to his people. My friends, I believe that because I can trace the history in the Bible as well as in world history. 117 years after Muhammad died, Islam had all this land. And if you notice that, there's kind of like a crescent all the way from Portugal, Spain. It goes down to Morocco, along North Africa, goes over through what we call Saudi, what we refer to as Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and goes up through Turkey, in through Iran, Pakistan, and it goes up forming like crescent. Because when you look at Muslims, there's a crescent in most of the flags of their nations. I suggest to you, that's by Allah's power. Because he's showing Islam act as a blocking force to this apostate Christianity that went from idol worship, that went from the seventh-day Sabbath to changing that day to worship on Sunday. You know, my friends, I've been going to tell this story. It just seems like we run out of time in a half an hour. But I want to assure you, I've talked to many people, And I've talked to old Seventh-day Adventist missionaries who have been in the Middle East for years. And they have come to realize why and how come and all these things. And they have a suggestion. They make a suggestion about this. As Muhammad was in Mecca, Mecca was full of traders. People would come sell their wares and so forth. And it's been suggested, and I think it's a correct suggestion. Muhammad, as the leader of the tribes at that time in Mecca, the people would come in from the oasis, from where the water source were. There'd be family members that come in. They'd come in from their different dwelling places with their camels, their caravans, and they would sell their goods in Mecca. But Muhammad called everybody together, I'm suggesting, on Friday afternoons. He'd give a sermon, and then they would break up. And they'd go back to their homes, go back to their original encampments. Because the next day was going to be the seventh-day Sabbath that Abraham kept, Ishmael kept, Isaac kept, and Muslims for centuries kept. Muhammad wanted everybody to be home for the Sabbath. Because when I read the Quran, in a translated form, there's at least 6 different spots where Muhammad talks about the Sabbath and condemning the Sabbath breakers. I know for a fact Muhammad was not a hypocrite. I know he was honest. I know he had integrity because he was a prophet of God. He was giving the same message that the prophet Abraham would have given. Just as Islam recognizes the 5 books in the Old Testament written by Moses, in the book of Exodus, chapter 31:13, it talks about the Sabbath is a sign of Allah's sanctifying power in you and I. The only way you and I can go to heaven is to be sanctified or made holy by Allah. My works, what I do, trying to please, has not got me to heaven or not made me holy at all. I need that gift from Allah. I need the gift. And that's why Jesus came to this earth as a human being. He was born of a human being, Mary. The Catholic system teaches that Mary is sinless. No. If he was sinless, my mother wasn't sinless. How would that help me? Mary was a sinner just like you and I, like our mothers were, like I am. He showed us, living by Allah's power, which Jesus had through his prayers. In the Injil tells us how he'd come apart and he'd pray. He needed the assistance, the work from Allah to give him the gift of righteousness. When the angel appeared to Mary, he had a gift of righteousness or holiness. He was sanctified. My friends, there's reasons for this. This isn't just a dry history lesson. Isa al-Masih is returning. And he's going to take everybody on this earth who have submitted, because Islam talks about submission. It's true. If we have not submitted to Allah and His will, there is no way that we are going to go to heaven. And as a Muslim, as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, I want to encourage you, we need to be in submission to Allah each and every day. In Revelation chapter 8, verse 13, this is where the story of Islam starts in the Bible. This is the last verse of chapter 8 of 13. This would be in the period of the 5th trumpet. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. Then we go to Revelation chapter 9, verse 1, the very next verse in the line in the Bible. It says this, The 5th angel, or 5th trumpet angel, sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. My friends, the Ottoman Turkish Empire understood the trumpets in the sense about who and what number of trumpet they were. Specifically, they were within the 6th trumpet era. There's one more trumpet to come, which is the 7th trumpet, which is the end of time. This picture comes from Istanbul, Turkey. The 6 trumpets. The Muslims of that era from the Ottoman Empire knew they were in the Bible. They were the 6th trumpet. The sad thing is, the Turkish people, their historians, have not told the rest of the story. So this Seventh-day Adventist Christian and others who've understood these things have come to realize you have an important part to play, and we Seventh-day Adventists who have the story prophetically in our belief system, you need to be told this system. Because you are important of who you are and where you're coming from and where you're going to go. The star that fell, I suggest to you, is Muhammad. Muhammad was called by Allah. Where was he? It was from heaven. It was from God's will. And he fell onto the earth. And to him, this talks about a man, a human being, was given the key or the authority of the bottomless pit. A key gives you the right to open a door, right to open it up. Muhammad had that from Allah himself. My friends, it's important to keep in mind that Islam was called by Allah. And fall, Revelation 9:1. This is a Strong's Concordance that talks about meanings. My friends, I want to share with you. Fall means, one of the things, the issues that I had in my book, I use the old line Bibles. Geneva Bible, King James Version Bible, Tyndale's New Testament, Noah Webster's Bible translation, George Lambza, who was in the 20th century, his Bible, the King James Version, 2000 edition. All these Bible verses had the word fall, not fallen, because Muhammad came to this earth at a specific point in time. My friends, we've run out of time. And we're going to have to pick this up, and we're going to take this up right in these Bible verses again, right here, because these Bible versions had it correct. The word fallen or fall, that became the issue in my writing as I came out with this information. Because most all theologians of all religions want to say the word there's the star is fallen to earth, which they say, oh, that's Lucifer, that's the devil. I do not believe that one iota, because the ancient Seventh-day Adventists who had the understanding of the correct understanding never believed that, never taught that. Only within the 20th century time frame and into the 21st century time frame are they starting to advance the idea, oh, the star that fell is the devil, and it all fits because they say, oh, see, Islam is of the devil. My friends, Islam is not of the devil. Islam is called by Allah. That's why he went through Genesis so carefully. My friends, I want to encourage you. Tune in next time, for Islam has a right to know, because the rest of the story is going to be presented. Islam is in the Bible. It's in Revelation chapter 9. We're going to continue that, and you can also get your Bible online. Thank you.